the world, let's chat it up. We're talking competitions, uniforms, and all of the above. It's the Cheer Mom, yes, the Cheer Mom podcast. Cheer Mom, yes, the Cheer Mom podcast. Cheer Moms, your podcast is on.
Do you want to get that high pony looking slick and clean every time? Well, whether it's competition hair, getting that super clean look for your choreography, or even just that cute, trendy low bun for going out with friends, Slick Hair Company is your answer. Slick Hair Company is the founder of the original Slick Stick, and they also provide high-quality hair care, hair accessories, and styling products that will help you to achieve the perfect style and look. I used their wax stick for that middle part low bun look, and it was awesome. I was even able to curl my hair the next day without washing it, and my hair wasn't all greasy and gross. Founded by a female entrepreneur, Slick Hair uses cruelty-free ingredients that smooths all hair types. They hydrate and strengthen your hair. They promote hair growth and leave your hair feeling fresh and not greasy or sticky. Visit slickhaircompany.com/thecheermomblog and use code thecheermomblog for 10% off your entire order. That's slickhaircompany.com/thecheermomblog and use code thecheermomblog for 10% off. Your perfect style awaits with Slick Hair Company. This episode of the Cheer Mom podcast is supported by the Cheer Collection, inspirational jewelry styles for every cheer enthusiast. As cheer moms, athletes, and those who love cheer moms and their athletes, we're all looking for a way to show our support. Sometimes that's a big fat head with your athlete's face or a big blingy jersey, but those things don't always translate into our day-to-day lives. The Cheer Collection provides quality, classic jewelry pieces, expertly engraved with subtle quotes like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, hit 0, and 1, 3, 5, 7. A necklace, bracelet, or ring from the Cheer Collection can be worn at school, work, or anywhere you need or want a touch of class and a little encouragement or reminder of the sport or the athlete that you love so much. And for those who have been asking, brand ambassador applications are now open. Big things are coming to the ambassador community, including opportunity for leadership development, to have input on new pieces of jewelry, and of course, to build community and make new friends. Visit thecheercollection.com. That's thecheercollection.com for details. And just for listeners of this podcast, if you enter code POD15, that's POD 15, you'll get 15% off of your purchase. Here are a couple of things that you may not know about me. You know me as the Cheer Mom or the Cheer Mom blog. I love it when I'm walking through a competition and you guys are like, Cheer Mom! And instinctively, I know that you're calling to me. My government name is actually Kristen. So you may not know that about me. Actually, one of the most memorable and affirming, there have been a lot of moments through the cheer season, especially this last season, where I've had meaningful connections with you all. But one of the most memorable was I was at a competition where I didn't have any particularly close friends or teams that I knew competing at this event. And I was just getting to the venue, and all of a sudden I hear somebody go, Kristen. And I was like, I was very confused. And I stopped and I looked around, and it was a coach introducing himself to me. And I was like, you know my name. He's like, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be like some rando, but I'm a fan. And I was like, it's not random. You know my name. We're friends. It was just, it made my heart happy. Something else that I drop in little nuggets here and there, but you may not know that I have been a business owner and been surrounded by entrepreneurs pretty much my whole life. And I don't just own the Cheer Mom podcast and the Cheer Collection Jewelry Company. I've been involved in our family business, which has mostly consisted of restaurants. We've been franchisees of nationally known restaurants. We have bought and sold. We have built from the ground up. I joke that like my husband Byron has done all of that while I sit at home and get my nails done. But I've been heavily entrenched in those rooms where business decisions are happening and where businesses are being built. I've been an executive in these rooms. I used to run a local chapter of nationally known nonprofit organizations, which basically operate like a business. So I have a lot of business background and a lot of interest in how businesses work and what kind of ideas and innovations business owners are talking about. I listen to a lot of business podcasts. I love reading business books. I'm fascinated by it. So why am I telling you this now? Well, we are in part 2 of I'm calling it the How Did We Get Here series. And really it's turned into the origins and history of cheerleading, but how Varsity took it to the next level, how Varsity was founded, and how it became the multi-billion-dollar business that it is just on its own. I'm not just talking about the cheer industry. Varsity Brands is worth billions. How did that happen? Why do people have a bad taste in their mouth when they say the word varsity? Why do people who don't work for Varsity or are not involved in day-to-day business operations of cheer, no shade, why are those people side-eyeing Varsity? As a lay cheer parent and as a person who hangs out with a lot of cheer parents, a lot of it comes down to, well, they overcharge for everything. And that's where the rub happens. So how did this organization, this corporation, go from being started in a man's apartment in 1974 to what it is today? And this is part 2 of this series. If you haven't listened to part 1, go back and listen to that episode. It's, I think, very fascinating. Basically, modern day cheerleading is a tale of 2 men, Lawrence Herkimer and Jeff Webb. Lawrence Herkimer founded NCA, Jeff Webb founded UCA, and ultimately Varsity Spirit and Varsity Brands. And I go through kind of their path to being business owners and turning cheerleading, where women weren't even invited to be involved, into we all of us listening probably have a daughter in cheer. I shout out to the moms of boy cheerleaders out there. Love you. So today's episode is going to be about the business background of Varsity. I'm going to give you some history, some background. I've talked to a lot of people close to these situations who have been involved in the industry, who were in some of the rooms where it happens, as it were. But I really want to bring it all home into, what does this mean for us as cheer parents? Like, we are not on the board of multi-billion-dollar corporations. We are, well, maybe some of you are, but certainly not a Varsity that I know of. Shout out to any Varsity staff that are listening. I mean, hey guys, I know that some of you guys listen. I know that you do. But how does this apply to us and our athletes' day-to-day lives in cheerleading? So here we go. I want to first start off by saying this is not a media report or a documentary. I am not a journalist. I don't have those credentials. I didn't go to college for journalism. I'm not a reporter. I am just a curious cheer mom and business-minded person with ADHD to boot. And although I am citing multiple sources from reputable media organizations, I was not in the room where it happens. How many times am I going to say in the room where it happens and think of Hamilton the musical? I'm not really sure. I was not there. I don't have firsthand knowledge. I have knowledge and opinion of people who have told me stories. I have the information laid out in media articles. I have, some of it can't be found. Some of the information that I have can't be found anywhere but listed out in lawsuits. So although I tried to find the source of that information, some of it's really hard. And I've spent, like I said in the last episode, months researching and talking to people. And it seemed like every time I sat down to record the episode, I would discover something new and then spend 3 more hours down the rabbit hole. And eventually I said, I've got to stop researching and I've got to start talking about it. So some of this is me just relaying information that I found with my personal opinion sprinkled throughout. And I'm going to say one more time that cheer athletes, if you are writing a paper or an essay and you need a topic, whether you're in elementary school, high school, college, otherwise, there is so much information and so many directions you could go with writing a paper about cheer. Email me. I can help you out. I can give you some sources and you might learn a lot about your sport in the process. I have to put my entrepreneur hat on for a good part of this episode. I'm going to try to be as objective as I can and as fair as I can, but there are just some really good business moves in here that cannot be overlooked. So first of all, like we talked about in the last episode, cheerleading was invented as we know it by Lawrence Herkimer. Now, cheer was around long before Herky, as they call him, but the guy created camps, he created cheer uniforms, he created the spirit stick, he created pom-poms, he created generational wealth for his family by being business-minded and innovative in the sport of cheer. When Jeff Webb had been working for Herky for a number of years, he saw an opportunity and wanted to take cheerleading in a more modern direction and supposedly wanted to take it from, sis boom ba, rah, 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 to an athletic sport. And people latched on to that. According to one article, it says, with no business experience and a relatively unconventional business plan, Webb was unable to secure institutional financing. Instead, he raised $80,000 by establishing a limited partnership and selling $5,000 shares in his company to his family and friends. He also invested $5,000 from his own savings. Now, I don't know how much the $80,000 he raised in 1974 would be worth today, but even today, that is not a small amount of money to raise for a business that basically no one had proven. When you go to get financing for a new business, you have to have a proof of concept. Like, you have to give to the bank the plan and how this can be profitable and how they're going to make their money plus interest back. They don't just give you money because you're a good person and you have a great idea. And there was no real point of reference. Herkimer had his camps, but Jeff, as it seems, he did want to start his own camps, but he wanted to make cheerleading entertaining, and people say he wanted to make it more competitive and start more competitions. He originally apparently hadn't intended to get into uniforms and all of the other things that he got into. And so if I'm a banker or an investor, I'm like, this sounds kind of crazy. So he made the camps happen and then reinvented the cheer uniform because the knit sweaters and the shoes with the heel on them wasn't really working for the athletic stunting, I assume, and tumbling that these now UCA cheer athletes were performing. So he started Varsity Spirit Fashion. And then because there wasn't a lot of marketing money or support behind his business, he had to get creative with how he marketed. So what he did was all of the kids, the thousands of kids that attended his UCA cheerleading camps in the summer, he would be able to sell the uniforms to the kids at camp and market the uniforms through the camps. And then purportedly to raise additional funding, Jeff and his team found a way to get cheerleading televised. 1978 was the first time that we saw a cheer routine on TV. You guys, I found it on a Facebook post. It's wild and crazy, and I will link it for you. So far, this is a scrappy businessman with an idea, saw an opportunity, is solving problems for his business in his industry with marketing the cheer uniforms, getting cheer on TV, getting eyes on the sport, getting more people to come to the camps and then buy more uniforms, and the cycle keeps going. And I've heard people scoff at, well, that sure is creating an insular monopoly. You want to know who else did this? You want to know who else innovated their business and drew new customers to their business so that they could sell other parts of their business to them? Walt Disney. Walt Disney did that. Disneyland was Walt's idealistic dream, and he wanted Main Street USA and wanted that utopia that we all experience when we go to Disney now, unless you have to rent a stroller. Otherwise, I'm going to pray for you. One of the original ideas was to build this theme park so that they could promote the movies. And Walt Disney got a show on television to promote his movies and to promote a whole new Disney World. The classics that you know, let me just get on my little Disney tangent here. The classics that you know, like Pinocchio, Bambi, and others that we see are the foundation of the Walt Disney Company. Not all of those movies did really well. In fact, a lot of them tanked. And then with many things, but especially with Disneyland and the Wonderful World of Disney on TV, he was able to revive those movies and remarket them to new audiences. Like, that's genius. Jeff Webb did something very similar with UCA and ultimately Varsity. Okay, so let's move on and talk about cheer competitions, because it was kind of obscure up to this point. Apparently, the first cheer competitions were in the 1960s and only among the college cheer teams. 1978, like I said, was the first time we saw it on TV. Again, college athletes. And then in 1980, the first high school cheerleading championship was held in Memphis, Tennessee. Not Orlando, not Dallas, Memphis, Tennessee. State winners from 8 states were invited to compete in this championship. And I think that's another smart business move, because there are more high school athletes than college athletes. There are more kids going to high school than are going to college. And furthermore, they have to have more business for the camps and not just for college students. And they have to have this continuing funnel of new people entering the sport. If college was the biggest moneymaker or the biggest form of competition for cheer in the 60s and 70s, well, you got to get them while they're in high school. You have to get them interested in the sport while they're in high school. So now high school competitions and high school cheer teams are often running. They are the cream of the crop in terms of young cheer athletes. The high school teams were it. You wanted to be on your local high school cheer team if you were a cheer athlete. So now we get to the part of our story where we learn, where did all-star cheer come from? Club cheer, private cheer, whatever you want to call it. Today it's called all-star cheerleading. How did that come about? And I think most of us, including me up to now, believe that that started with cheer athletics and Top Gun All-Stars in 1994. Both of those gyms are nationally and now internationally known gyms. They both started in 1994. They're both some of the most decorated programs in the history of all-star cheerleading. All-star cheer is arguably what it is today because of the Rosarios, because of Angela Rogers, because of Brad Habermel and Jody Melton. But that is not, my friends, that is not where all-star cheer started. Those were not the first all-star cheer teams. So the whole rabbit hole that I went down of where was the first all-star cheerleading practice and who were the first all-star cheerleaders, it wasn't a waste of time because it was cool to learn, but it's moot because this did not start in 1994. No. Now, There are basically 3 different opinions or accounts, depending on who you ask, of how All-Star Cheerleading started. So the first one is All-Star started because so many girls wanted to be high school cheerleaders on their local high school cheer team, and there just wasn't enough space. The second one is All-Star was made up of cheer athletes who were not good enough to make their high school team. And the third reason, theory, fill in your own blank here, according to the authors of the book Cheerleader, an American Icon, All-Star Cheerleading was created because there was a decline in the interest of gymnastics. And so gym owners were faced with the decision to either close their gym or diversify their customer base. Again, if that's true, which I have no reason to believe that it isn't, genius. You have to, if you're a business owner, you have to consistently innovate. You always have to be innovating and pivoting, or you're toast. You're done. So that's smart on the part of these gymnastics gym owners. So the very first All-Star cheer team was named the Q94 Rockers, and it was run by a woman by the name of Hilda McDaniel. They were the only team not associated with a school and showed up at NCA in 1984, and according to some reports, beat all of the high school teams, or most of the high school teams in their division. And by 1987, the All-Star division was born at NCA because the high school teams were tired of losing to the All-Star team. And this first All-Star cheer team was born and came from none other than Cheer Extreme All-Stars. See, we all thought that Cheer Athletics was the very first All-Star cheer gym. No, it's Cheer Extreme All-Stars. Shout out to the teal. And by some accounts, both NCA and UCA organizers or owners at the time were resistant to the idea of All-Star cheerleading. They didn't think that it would work, but more people found opportunities and got scrappy, and the rest, as they say, is history, right? Okay, so let's get back to Varsity. So at this point, Jeff Webb is still running Varsity. He had, at the beginning, raised a bunch of money and given his friends and family who invested money, gave them a share in the company. He's growing the camps, he's growing the fashion, he's growing competitions. And by 1989, referenceforbusiness.com says that UCA was bringing in more than $20 million in yearly sales. And apparently late in that year, and this is where I think it starts to get, at a minimum, dramatic. It starts to get complicated. This is the first milestone where I see lawsuits starting to pop up, because later in 1989, the original partners who invested in Jeff Webb and his new company, UCA, who had each fronted $5,000, they chose to cash out. I mean, can you blame them? They see $20 million in 1989 and they're like, I want my investment and interest in the company back. They effectively sold 2/3 of the company to a group of investors by way of a leveraged buyout, which apparently loaded UCA up with debt until they took the company public in 1992. They made the decision to go public, sell shares in the company, and use that cash to pay off all of their debt. According to this article, Jeff Webb sold, it sounds like, his majority interest in the company. So he got a good check, but he only held on to about 13% of it, and still stayed on as chairman and CEO at this point, I believe. And then they changed the name to Varsity. They changed it from Universal Cheerleaders Association to Varsity Spirit Corp. And it's at this point in the game where we start to see an influx and an explosion, a pop of all-star cheerleading come into play. So shortly after that, Cheer Athletics was born, Top Gun was born. Other all-star cheer gyms were popping up all over the country. And interestingly enough, those two gyms' first competition was not NCAA or UCA as we know it today. One gym's first competition was with an independent event company in their region, and other all-star cheer gyms just hopped on to their existing high school competitions. So I'm not sure that even varsity realized the potential that lied within all-star cheerleading. Then, in an interesting twist of events, the company Riddell that makes athletic equipment, you see their name on the back of just about every football helmet you've ever seen. They bought Varsity for $91 million in 1997. It's a little unclear what Riddell did after that, if they took them private or went public again. I'm not really sure when Riddell sold and passed it off, but at any rate, in 2003, a private equity and investment firm called Leonard Green and Partners took Varsity private in a deal valued at around $131 million and then changed the name to Varsity Brands Incorporated. And here's the thing that I have learned about private equity firms. This is going to be important as we go through the rest of this timeline, because private equity firms, to put it bluntly, they don't care about cheerleading. They care about making their investors money. Private equity firms also don't have, for those of you who are like, yeah, exactly, that's right. To my knowledge, every private equity firm that has owned Varsity hasn't had a say in their day-to-day dealings, in their day-to-day operations, in their athlete safety policies, in how they run their events. To put it simply, they care about the bottom line. And another important thing that I've learned and that you guys need to remember for the next few minutes as I go through this is that private equity firms tend to buy an entity like Varsity, beef it up, as I like to say, expand, acquire, increase the value, and then sell it for a profit. That's their, I'm oversimplifying it, but that is the system. So 2003, this private equity firm buys Varsity, and in 2011, they acquire Herff Jones, which is the yearbook, ring, all-encompassing school spirit company. In 2012, they acquired BSN Sports. A lot of times they'll use the word merge, but they acquired it. It was a company of Varsity Brands. According to a lawsuit filed in 2020, Varsity acquired Spirit Festival in 2011, which was a rival organization and a very popular cheer event and competition. In 2012, Varsity acquired Spirit Holdings, which owned Cheer Sport, Cheer Logistics, and Universal Spirit. At the time, Spirit was one of Varsity's largest competitors, promoting over 30 competitions a year, and Cheersport. So Cheersport existed on its own before it was a varsity competition. In 2014, Varsity acquired Cheer Limited, one of Varsity's largest rivals. At the time, Cheer Limited produced more than 25 competitions each year, including the Cheer Limited Nationals at Can-Am and the NCHSAA State High School Cheerleading Championship. Okay, so they acquired all of these entities, all of these businesses, all of these competitors, as they say, and then increased the value of the company. And then in 2014, Charles Bank Capital Partners acquired Varsity, including all of their brands, for $1.5 billion. So as far as my research, the last acquisition or sale of Varsity was to the first private equity firm for $131 million, which grew in just over 10 years, 11 years, to a $1.5 billion sale to Charles Bank. So this is where I really started to notice. It kind of started in 2009, 2010, it picked up speed. 2011, it got even more speed, where Varsity was purchasing these independent event brands. And I thought, that's interesting. I wonder what the motivation was to sell to Varsity. I wonder why that happened so quickly, especially in 2014, 2015, 2016. It seemed like there was all of this competition in the market. There were all of these options for your cheer competitions, and then suddenly Varsity owned them all. So Varsity owns dozens and dozens of cheer competition brands, most of which existed on their own before they were Varsity competitions. So Cheer Sport is an example. And one thing that I see a lot of cheer parents asking about is they say, when you say we're competing at NCA, what do you mean? Because we have an NCA in our small town. So the vernacular is a little bit interesting because when in the industry, NCA is such a well-known and highly prestigious competition that when you say NCA, people know that you're talking about the big NCA Super Nationals in Dallas, Texas. But it's worth talking about that NCA is a brand, and it's not just made up of one competition. There are NCA regionals, like in Roseville, California. There are other NCA competitions that happen all over the country, but the biggest one is NCA in Dallas. Another example of that is Aloha. Aloha has events all over the country, but their biggest one happens, I believe it's in Phoenix. Yes. And the difference is sometimes the number of bids that they're able to hand out for Summit or Worlds, if they have a Worlds bid. I think the idea was probably to have more accessibility so that smaller teams or smaller gyms didn't have to travel so far to come to quote unquote the main event. So that's how that works. So Varsity started scooping up all of these brands and then basically owned all or almost all. It's reported that at one point they had a 90% share of the market for cheerleading. So they owned and controlled the majority of all of the cheer competitions that were happening in the US. So again, I wonder, what was the motivation? Was it pressure from Varsity? Was it these small businesses could no longer compete with the prices that Varsity was offering their customers? Was there a promise of, when you're a business owner and you need funding to make payroll for the week, you get a big corporation like Varsity coming in and saying, you're still going to get to coordinate and lead your event, but now you don't have to worry about making payroll ever again. We'll take care of that. A lot of times that's an offer you can't refuse as a business owner who's maybe struggling. And I think some people, as it's been told to me, they were burnt out. Do you guys know, think about your 1 day or 2 day competitions. How exhausted are you after that competition? We all know that the cheer hangover exists. Okay, now multiply that times 20. These cheer event producers are traveling every weekend. They are managing staff. They are putting up backdrops. They are putting together stages. They are putting together springboards and spring floors and warm-up mats. It's an undertaking and it's exhausting. And I can imagine people can get just tired of the travel game and are burnt out and are ready to sell. And Varsity was there ready to rescue them from their situation. But there was still one big player that remained Varsity's biggest competitor, and that was Jam Brands. So Jam Fest has been an amazing, well-known brand in the cheer industry, and my daughter actually competed at Jam Fest before Varsity owned it. It was owned by Jam Brands, and as one article described it, Varsity's acquisition of the Jam Brands, then the second largest event producer, was one of Varsity's most audacious moves. Jam Brands ran most of the high-profile competitions that Varsity doesn't own. Together, they control roughly 90% of the major events. say competitors. Prior to the acquisition, the Jam Brands was an independent event producer and Varsity's chief competitor. The Jam Brands produced cheer competitions that included divisions for high school, college, and all-star cheer teams, as well as recreational divisions. They owned Cheerleaders of America, America's Best. They produced the majors. The U.S. Finals was a Jam Brands event. And of course, Jam Fest Super Nationals that we all know and love in the icy cold January season in Indianapolis, Indiana. This is from an antitrust lawsuit filed against Varsity. It says, prior to its acquisition, the Jam Brands was a disruptive, aggressive, and innovative competitor, introducing new event concepts that competed directly with Varsity's cheer competitions and had the potential of challenging Varsity's dominance. Apparently, the Jam Brands generally offered free admission to event spectators, go Jam Brands, but soon after acquiring the Jam Brands, Varsity sent a letter to All-Star Cheer Gym owners assuring them, for you as a customer, nothing will change. Yet, Varsity increased its registration fees for cheer competitions within a year. One person in the cheer industry told me when Varsity acquired Jam Brands, we knew it was game over. We knew that there was not going to be a competitive market in cheer, is basically what I deduced from what they were telling me. So that was 2015. Are we seeing a pattern here? A private equity firm adds Varsity to its portfolio and the acquisitions happen quickly. They happen often, it appears. In 2016 to 2017, following its acquisition of Jam Brands, Varsity continued to acquire actual or potential competitors in the cheer competition market, including Aloha, Spirit, Celebration, Mardi Gras Spirit, and Team Epic Brands. This is my opinion, but I just feel like there was pressure to, again, beef up the portfolio and make Varsity more valuable so that the private equity firm could turn around and sell it for a huge profit. Does that mean that potentially executives of Varsity weren't excited about the idea also? No, like who doesn't want a big check? This is they're living in the middle of the American dream here. Like who doesn't want to have more money? So they did just that. And just 4 years after Charles Bank purchased Varsity, they sold it to Bain Capital in 2018 for approximately $2.5 billion, making their gross profit, if you guys are keeping score, at $1 billion. The equity firm, not necessarily Varsity. Now, could Varsity executives or higher ups have worked out a deal where they get a portion of a sale? Maybe, but we don't know the specifics of that. I just want to make it clear that these are private equity firms making the profits and distributing them, not the cheer company necessarily. Again, that's just my opinion, my conjecture. I don't know that to be fact. These are private sales and we don't get to know the particulars of how the money was distributed. Now, Bain Capital, it's funny, my dad is in investments and financial planning and wealth management. And when I asked him about years ago, and I was like, Bain Capital is Varsity's parent company. Like, what does that mean? And he was like, that's weird because Bain Capital, like when I think of Bain Capital, I don't think of cheerleading. Like they're involved in energy and I have a Google alert for Bain Capital. Like their portfolio is vast. And from what I've seen, almost none of it is youth sports. So it's funny because not understanding how Varsity is structured and the amount of money that's involved in cheerleading, he was like, it's probably, a family member or friend of one of the private equity firm partners that threw Varsity a bone and brought it into the portfolio as a favor. That could be true, but I don't think so. $2.5 billion. So the time frame between when Charles Bank owned Varsity, and the most recent sale to KKR, also a private equity firm. Spoiler, KKR bought them for a reported $4.75 billion. Those are the times when we start seeing these antitrust lawsuits pop up. Varsity has been named in many lawsuits in the last 10 years, describing its business practices as monopolistic, going as far as to say that they sacrificed practices to keep youth athletes safe in the name of money and profits. It's said that they have, as an organization, overlooked poor behavior of high up officials in the industry. They edge competitors out by not allowing them to market their cheer-related business at varsity cheer competitions. All of these are allegations named in lawsuits. The burden is on the people bringing the lawsuits to prove that. I don't have personal firsthand knowledge of most of these things, but it's been brought up enough times to go, right? And I think that's where cheer parents are right now. It's like, why are cheer competitions so expensive? And what's going on over there, Varsity? One thing that cheer parents, if you want to trigger a cheer parent, say these 3 words: stay to play. Stay to play is kind of enigmatic and difficult to explain. So stay to play is when you register to go to a certain, usually large cheer competition. You are required to stay at a hotel that Varsity tells you you have to stay at. They're like, this is the group of hotels. You have to stay at one of them or you can't compete. So more specifically, there are exceptions, but more specifically, a certain percentage of teams, athletes need to be staying in a Varsity stay to play hotel. And unless you have extenuating circumstances, even then, you have to file an application to be excused or excluded from this. Not everybody has to. And there are, workarounds that people have. I see it as, well, on the one hand, yes, I would like to use my points to stay wherever I want. Thank you very much. And this competition is not offering my hotel of choice as part of their stay to play. So no, I won't be doing that. On the other hand, I can see it as a tool for negotiations to convince a city to give them what we've learned now are called citywide events. NCA in Dallas is another great example. We as a cheer industry completely take over the city of downtown Dallas during NCA. And there are all kinds of contracts and negotiations that you need in order to have an event of that size for the amount of time that they need it on the same weekend from year to year. These convention centers are also connected to hotel brands and chambers of commerce and have to be invested into the economic success of that downtown and surrounding areas. So I can see it in my mind's eye. Again, I'm not in the room where it happens, but I can see people negotiating over these contracts and saying, okay, we won't charge you this fee as long as you promise to occupy 10,000 hotel rooms at these hotels. Like, it's not just Varsity or these cheer companies making these deals. It's, I think, the convention centers also making sure that their partners are taken care of. I think it's kind of the same as if you've ever planned a wedding or planned an event. Some venues don't let you bring in outside food or drink, but they'll give you a list of approved caterers. And so that's a network of people partnering. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. I would imagine that there is a component of that comes into play with Varsity Stay to Play. Now, is it possible and highly likely that Varsity gets a kickback for maybe being an affiliate to these chosen hotels? Absolutely. Absolutely. It could be Team Travel Source is really the one booking that, but it could be that they're contacting these hotels and saying, hey, if we bring you X number of rooms, will you give us a rebate? Will we get a portion of those sales? And the hotels are like, well, yeah, we would love to be booked out for 5 whole days in a row. Yeah, we'll give you a discount for that. So that's very possible. And the consumer doesn't really get anything out of that because we're not getting discounted hotel rates. One leader in the industry told me that they have since revamped the stay to play program and are now giving things like free rooms back to the gym for their coaches or for their use. And so the gyms are saving money. I'm not going to deny that there are politics around stay to play, and maybe we can talk about that on another episode. It's maddening. They released the hotel room blocks for NCA, and it is a stressful mad dash to try to get a room that is reasonable, that is the size that you need, that is relatively close to the venue. And they get eaten up like that. Like I literally left the prayer circle in the middle of my Bible study the day that the NCA room block came out one year. I was like, I can't afford to, I can't wait for the amen. I have to go book this hotel room or I'm going to lose it. I'm going to be Ubering back and forth and nobody wants to do that. I have a chance at getting a hotel room within walking distance of the venue. I'll pray for you ladies later. It's maddening. It's stressful. So here's the deal. Is Varsity a multi-billion-dollar corporation? Yes. Does it appear as though they have made some missteps? Yes. In general, do people who come into money always want more money? In general, probably. Does it appear as though Varsity worked really hard to eliminate their competition? It does appear that way. Does Varsity charge a lot of money for parents and siblings to watch their cheer athletes perform for 2 minutes and 30 seconds? Yeah, that's a lot of money. And my opinion is they charge that because they can, because we'll pay. And it's my understanding that from the many conversations that I've had, that many gym owners in the industry are frankly afraid of Varsity. There have been claims that Varsity has threatened that there would be ramification on a program if they competed somewhere else. There was an email that went out saying that you cannot compete at X competition that is similar to our competition. I've heard that entire programs are scared to go to other events. They're afraid that they're going to get disqualified or poorly judged or not be allowed to perform or not get a bid to the end of season event that they want. This is why I believe that there is a heavy sigh and an eye roll when people talk about Varsity as a corporation. But here's what I'm going to tell you. I have spent a good amount of time with the people who are making the cheer events and the programs and activities that Varsity puts on, making those things happen. And regardless of what's happening in the room where it happens, in private equity firms or at the highest of high levels at Varsity, the people that are putting on your child's cheer competitions really care about your kids and really care about your kids' safety. And many of them were some of these independent event producers that founded and originated some of these events, sold to Varsity for their own reasons, and have stayed working and organizing those events. When you go to a Varsity event and see smiling faces of Varsity staff that are trying to put on a good event, that's real. That's authentic. These are people who used to be athletes, who used to be your coaches. Some of them are still your coaches. They love cheerleading. They love seeing your kids succeed. They love an incredible cheer routine. That is real. And so don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that like every corporation of its size, Varsity has some self-reflection to do. They should be doing that on a regular basis, regardless of if there's a bad perception or a problem or not. They have probably made some big missteps, but don't hold that against the people that you are seeing and that you are dealing with on the ground level when you go to these cheer competitions. Another thing that I want to leave you with is, what can we do? If you want to see change in the industry, if you think that Varsity is a monopoly, if you are, as a lot of cheer parents say, they're tired of playing by Varsity's rules. Listen, I don't have skin in this game anymore. My cheerleader is retired. So I am objectively saying this to you. Just like with many things in life, you'll have the greatest impact at your local level. We've got an election coming up. And while we should all go out and vote for president, your vote is going to make a bigger impact when you vote for your school board, when you vote for your local congressman, when you vote for your state legislators. Those are the people that are going to make an impact positively or negatively on your day-to-day life and the day-to-day life of your kids. I'm going to use the same analogy with cheerleading. Just like the athlete safety conversations that we've had, sure, maybe at the high level, these big organizations need to crank down on their policies and have tighter restrictions, whatever that may mean or look like. But you can have an impact at your local gym, not just with asking your gym owner about their own safety policies and how they vet their own employees. Buy your gym owner or director a cup of coffee and ask them, what are the benefits and disadvantages of competing at this event versus that event, and see what they say. If you are completely for or against any cheer event company, you are the consumer, you are the customer, and your dollar is your most powerful vote. You vote with your dollar. If you don't like the direction that your program is going, go somewhere else. That's easier said than done, I understand. But if you are afraid to leave your gym, if you don't want to cause waves, I totally get that. That undermines, if not takes away, your right to complain about Varsity or any other cheer company. Harsh truths from a curious cheer mom with ADHD. Look at your gym owners and their business practices too, because I've also been told that Varsity and other cheer event companies issue refunds to programs that maybe they withdrew from the competition, maybe the gym got a rebate, maybe the gym got one of those free hotel rooms, and the gyms are not passing that savings on to their customers. Yeah, there are some bad actors that are out there pocketing money. We've seen them, but sometimes it's because the gym owner can't pay their electric bill, and so they're using that refund money to pay their electric bill and not refunding that to their customers. Like, both are wrong. Most gyms will charge your tuition, which is usually what the gym needs to staff their coaches and pay their bills. And then you get a separate line item that says registration fees or coaches' travel fees, right? So we all pay a certain amount of money per month or per year or however they divide it out at your gym. And they'll tell you, like, this deposit is for your cheer event registration fees. And this deposit is to make sure that our coaches can get to the competition and have a place to stay. But if the gym is rebated or partially refunded or fully refunded fees from those two line items, my opinion is that that should go back to the customer because it's not booked on their accounting records as income. It's basically it's an in-out expense. It's a pass-through. Like, they just need the money from you so they can pay somebody else. Well, if that somebody else gives them their money back or they didn't have to pay it in the first place, should the gym get to keep that money or should it go back to the people who collectively paid for it? What do they say? You decide. 2024. I really think that we are the most effective when we control what we can control and make an impact where we can make an impact. And I think it's important for gym owners to be transparent about how they're spending your money. They don't owe you a P&L. They don't owe you a breakdown of how they spend their money. But I don't think that cheer parents are speaking out of turn when they have questions about things like registration fees. Like every cheer competition in the industry lists their registration fees on their website. Like it is, and some of them even list them on social media. It's not hard to find. Most of them have an early bird registration fee. And I would say rather than spending all of your time worrying about the score sheet or your child's position in the routine, spend that energy adding that up. How many kids are on your team? When did the owner register for this competition? What does that add up to? You have to be careful because you don't want to be accusatory, but these are the things to be looking at if you're so concerned about the expense of cheer. You have the power to not go to that competition. Some gym owners, especially now, are offering it up for a vote. I know Jason Larkins, shout out Larkins, the parents ultimately decide what events they're going to go to. So food for thought. Bet you didn't realize that I was going to take it in this direction. I didn't really either until right before I hit record. But it's like, we don't have all the facts. Yes, it puts a bad taste in our mouth. But should we spend our energy being mad about it or spend that energy in areas where we can make an impact? I'm going to leave you with that. On the next episode, I will be answering your most commonly asked questions about varsity specifically. You guys had a lot of them. Over 100 of them came in. And I'm going to tackle some of them. If you enjoyed this episode, if you got information from this episode that you think would benefit one of your friends, please do me a favor and share from whatever platform you are listening in. And if you could go the extra mile and leave a review, that also helps more people to find the show. I love you all. And remember, at the end of the day, it's all just cheerleading.